18. Wolves Molineux, 25% chance of surviving unscathed in the 70s. Maybe a surprise for some, and I know the big firms West Ham, Man United, etc. had relatively easy times there in the 70s, but for others, it could be a nightmare. Chelsea did take the North Bank in 1977, but by then all the Wolves firms were in the South Bank and had been since 1972. No firm have ever taken the Wolves section of the South Bank as far as I know. The huge South Bank was unfenced until 1978, and many smaller firms came a cropper there, such as Leeds Boxing Day 1977, who were surrounded, and eventually the thin blue line of police gave way, and they had to leave the ground for their own safety. If that wasn't bad enough, the journey to the trains and coaches went through the notorious subways, where the pre-subway army firms would be waiting for you. 14. Sunderland's Roker Park, 25% chance of surviving unscathed in the 70s. The Northeast is never an easy time for football hooligans firms, and in the 70s it was even worse. Spurs and West Ham are the only teams to have tried to take the home end the full well in the 70s, although Newcastle were certainly in there. But that was 85. All failed, I believe. Away fans would be attacked to and from the ground and also in the away section at the Roker end. Never visited myself but heard bad things about the place. Pre-Seaburn casuals who started up in the 80s. 13. Tottenham's White Hart Lane, 25% chance of surviving unscathed in the 70s. Not so daunting for the London firms of West Ham, Chelsea and Millwall, but for the rest could be a very troublesome place to visit. Not so much inside the ground, but that long walk down the Seven Sisters Road, getting ambushed at every junction by hundreds of Yid Army, would long live in your memory. 12. Cardiff's Ninian Park, 20% chance of surviving unscathed in the 70s. A tough place to visit, but due to Cardiff usually being in the lower divisions, not enough high-profile matches to test them out. However, when they did play the bigger firms, there was carnage. Leeds 1972 and especially Man United 1974 spring to mind. Attacks on away fans inside the ground were common, but the worst carnage would be on the long walk back to the station. Chelsea did take the home end apparently, but that wasn't until 1984. Everton, Leeds Elland Road, 20% chance of surviving unscathed in the 70s. Horrible place to visit in the 70s. The away section would be infiltrated by the Leeds firms, but even worse would be waiting for you after the match with an escortless journey back to the trains and coaches, with thousands of Leeds service crew waiting for you. I don't believe anyone has ever taken the Leeds home end, the Cop or the North Stand. Horrible place. And Birmingham City's St Andrews, 20% chance of surviving unscathed in the 70s. Although average attendance is nowhere near the big teams of the decade, there would always be a few thousand Zulus waiting for you, either at the New Street station or at the ground or on the long walk from and back to the coaches and trains. Inside the ground there was no segregation until the late 70s, so attacks in their side end was regular and sustained. 9. Man City's Main Road, 15% chance of surviving unscathed in the 70s. Located in one of Manchester's roughest areas, Moss Side Main Road was a big surprise to most fans, who were usually unaware of what waited for them after the match. They would be ambushed by local Mancs, and the narrow streets and alleyways offered little protection. Even the local police wouldn't help you, and many away fans have come a cropper here. Not so bad while in the ground, but very nasty afterwards. They even had a mixed race firm called the Cool Cats that you didn't want to cross, unusually for the times. 8. Newcastle St James's Park, 15% chance of surviving unscathed in the 70s. Not many away fans visited Newcastle in the 70s, largely due to the distance involved, but also to the fact that the Geordies weren't the lovable, friendly lot we know today. Apart from being targeted on the long journey to and from the stations, you would also get a visit from their hardcore enemies in the away section of the ground. They have even been known to throw petrol bombs at away fans. West Ham 1980. 7. Middlesbrough Ayresome Parks, 15% chance of surviving unscathed in the 70s. A surprising entry to many, but the bleak northern city could be a major pitfall for away fans. The front line would be waiting for you at some point along the long walk from the train station, usually the park, and they would often invade the away section of the ground, especially near the end of the match when the gates were opened by supposed unsuspecting gatemen. West Ham are the only firm I know who got a result there, legging the front line after they ambushed them in the park in 1975. 6. Chelsea Stamford Bridge, 15% chance of surviving unscathed in the 70s. Now this is a funny one because legend has it that the Shed, Chelsea's home end, was often taken in the 70s by West Ham, Arsenal and even Millwall. But for anyone else, the North Stand away section of the ground was a nightmare, with attacks from their North Stand mob common, almost expected. If you survived that, you now need to survive the escortless route back to the coaches and trains. Chelsea headhunters also had a nasty tactic of waiting until you were on the tube, then attacking you at an unexpected venue. Just ask Everton fans who were ambushed at the Bank in 1978. Nightmare. 5. Everton's Goodison Park, 10% chance of surviving unscathed in the 70s. A very bad place to visit on the wrong day. Often they would attack the away fans by entering their section when the gates were opened by the stewards 20 minutes before the end. If not, they would be waiting for you after the match. Millwall fans tried to take the Everton home end, the Goodison Street, in 1974, and at least 7 were stabbed. A couple seriously injured. Horrible place. 4. Liverpool's Anfield, 10% chance of surviving unscathed in the 70s. Best supporters in the land, not quite. These scallies attacked you in the Anfield Road end, which was supposed to be designated for away fans. If that didn't work, they would ambush you on the long walk down the Scotty Road or wait for you at the coaches' park. Even West Ham's famous ICF came a cropper here in a League Cup match back in '73. The Scousers all joined forces to annihilate a West Ham Mile End mob. The ICF claimed this beating was the prelude to the ICF being formed a few years later. Chelsea and Man United are the only firms to have tried to take the Kop and both failed, unsurprisingly. 3. Man United's Old Trafford, 10% chance of surviving unscathed in the 70s. Maybe a surprise to some, but this place was a nightmare in the 70s. The Red Army would be waiting for you at the junction once you got off the train. And I mean a top firm of hundreds of them. The coaches was no better, and I have personal experience to remind me. Inside the ground, their scoreboard firm would be after your guts, literally, and after the match, spotters would be up lampposts trying to point out away fans to their mates, who would then attack with ferocity. I know I was one of those away fans. Bad place to get lost. Rangers are the only firm to have taken the home end, the Stretford Lane end in 1974 apparently. 2. Millwall's The Den, 5% chance of surviving unscathed in the 70s. Not many away fans went to the Den in the 70s. Millwall reputation was the reason why. I went there regularly with some Millwall fans in the early 70s, and we used to bet on how long the away fans lasted. Notts Forest was the longest at 10 minutes. Some crazy fools even tried to take the Cold Blow Lane end, Millwall's home end allegedly. West Ham, Chelsea and even Swansea tried and were severely punished. Although Swansea may have been a mistaken identity stand, but we'll never know now. What the away fans didn't know at the time was that Millwall had 3 or 4 firms inside the ground waiting for you, and they could move around the ground at will, making it probably the most dangerous ground in the whole world for away fans. There was no escape. Until the fences went up late 70s, I think. Even then it was a nightmare, both inside and outside the ground. Even Man United in their mid-70s prime wouldn't show up at Millwall, so that tells you everything you need to know. Considering their very small numbers, it's amazing that they are in second place, really. 1. West Ham's Upton Park, 5% chance of surviving unscathed in the 70s. Man United are the only firm to have taken over West Ham's home end, the North Bank, in their title-winning match of 1967. West Ham have never forgiven them for that, and so some epic encounters have ensued between them, notably the 1974 clash, where scores of Man United fans were injured in the South Bank, which was then home for the away fans. Unfortunately, the West Ham firms infiltrated that sections almost every time, and most away firms were dealt with swiftly and effectively. If you survived that, you probably wouldn't survive the journey to the trains and coaches, or the ambushing at the market. Such was West Ham's dominance that an away firm that did turn up was greeted with astonishment, such as Notts Forest, who in 1977 managed to get into the South Bank, but by 3:15 p.m. were sent packing onto the pitch and out of the ground. Such was their beating. Not as effective as Millwall inside the ground, but larger numbers and worse before and after the match, which in my view puts them slightly ahead of the Millwall Bushwhackers. Thanks for watching. Do you agree? Probably not. It's all a bit of banter, so please don't take it serious. Leave comments if I have missed out your ground. I know a few others that were close to getting in, Sheffield United's Bramall Lane and Stoke's Victoria Ground to name a few. Now please subscribe as it really helps our channel grow to give you bigger, better content.